The landscape that we live in today is really confusing. And in addition, or perhaps as a result of that confusion, is people are not really sure where to go or how to think. And one of the mantras of the modern age or postmodern age, depending on which of those things you subscribe, if you subscribe at all, is the notion of question everything. And what I find most interesting about the notion of question everything is that this questioner, which tries very hard to remain invisible and is very elusive, who is the one that is telling us or giving us this imperative to question everything? And of course, the most telltale of this is that while it does ask us to question all other forms of authority, because that's what it's really about, is it very much does not want its authority called into question. And in fact, we may ask ourselves, well, what credentials do you have to make us question what we know, right? What gives you not simply just the right, but what qualifications do you have to make us question our understanding of reality? And if we do so, what conclusions are we to come to? Because if we just simply question, sort of, ad infinitum into, I just got through saying, Avengers, into the quantum zone of just drilling down into essentially what amounts to nothingness, then this does create a kind of madness. So for me, I'm very skeptical of anybody that asks me to question what I already know, not because I am the arbiter of truth, but I'm more suspicious of what their agenda is. And I've been reading The Domestication of Transcendence by William Placher, who was a Christian academic and theologian. And he wrote about what he described as the frustration, right, of postmodernity and how postmodernism has in many ways infected everything, all fields of knowledge and study. And yet no one seems to be questioning it. And of course, he said, one of the trickiest things about postmodernism is that he said take the word that it's essentially axiomatic on, which is the word modern. And he said, people aren't even in agreement on what modern is. And if that's the case, then how can you be beyond post, right? Beyond modern, if you don't even have a complete and total agreement of what modern is. And he said that this has been akin to like poisoning a well, that people, they're not sure, somebody comes along and says, hey, don't drink from that water, it's been poisoned. Well, whether it has been or not, you're probably going to be very reluctant to dip into that well just to be sure. And I feel that that's very much the case that we have today, is that people are reluctant to drink from the well of religion, and as we talk about ourselves as Muslims, partly because the well has been poisoned. Not because there's actually any poison in the well, but it just creates this hyper suspicion and hyper skepticism. So that's why I said the other day, put more time into cultivating and developing your own certainty, something that the Quran calls yaqeen, right? Certainty. And that is something that doesn't come about as a passive exercise. It's something that requires you to participate. It requires your response. And that's why I've been talking so much about the 42nd chapter of the Quran, where Allah says, وَالَّذِينَ اسْتَجَابُوا لِرَبِّهِمْ, right? Those that respond to their Lord, وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. But the ayah starts with, right, the verse starts with, and those who respond to their Lord. Certainty in belief does not come through osmosis. It comes through a response. The world has been created, right? The book and the messenger have been sent, and you have an obligation to respond to it and to engage with it. And through that is a process that will be different for all of us in terms of intensity and time and so on, but that is the process by which one will gain certainty. And he said it's because of this poisoning of the well, he said that, particularly this process theology, something that's come about in recent times, has really led to what he believes is the transcendence of, or the domestication of transcendence, like the domestication of the idea of God, of the divine. And this has led what he talks about Charles Taylor and his sort of like postmodern, scholarship on theology in the West. And he said Taylor has little to say about revelation or grace. And I see this today in our talk about, Allah, about God. It's very speculative, it's very cold and logical, but there's very little room for the kind of radicalness of Allah, of what we would say, huwa yaf'alu ma yurid, that Allah does as He wills. There's always going to be a bit of a mystery in that because we are not consulted on what Allah chooses to do. And he says that I will argue with respect for the transcendent risks leaving him with nothing to say about God at all, right? And I worry that we are going to also follow down this line of the tradition of the secular influence on theology, as us as Muslims, that we will have everything to say about the Quran and nothing to say about God. So spend some time cultivating that. Yes, we're on the doorstep, inshallah, of Ramadan, but regardless, if you live, if you're blessed to live beyond the month of Ramadan, this is something that requires maintenance, upkeep. So spend less time with all of the rebuttals and more time of cultivating a deep and personal conviction about what the nature of reality is, which is based upon La ilaha illallah. Wa jazakum Allahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum.